Hello and welcome to this week's musing. It's an overcast, dull, but otherwise dry day here in Manchester. It's been a bit blustery this weekend, but I think that's all been the same again all over the country. So anyway, there's a weather update. Right then, today's musing. First off, we'll kick off with the black powder painting competition thing. Basically, the painting competition for the Warlord stuff has begun. I believe it was in their newsletter. I don't know. So I am informed. So if you go to My Wargaming Life, you can upload your pictures to the Black Powder Warlord painting competition group. If you just search for Warlord or something, and you'll see the group. You just need to join it and upload your pictures or links to whatever to that particular group if you want to be entered into the Warlord painting portion competition. So effectively, if you can buy it on the Warlord website, I'm saying you don't have to buy it, you don't have to bought it on the Warlord website, but if you can buy it on the Warlord website, you can enter it into that competition. Somebody was asking, I noticed in the Paint Off groups on Facebook, saying that what happens if it's something that, well, I see a flaw in your plan. What happens if it's something that Warlords sell by a different manufacturer? I think he was trying to be clever, but basically, if Warlord flog it, it's eligible. So it doesn't make any difference. And if Warlord have done an arrangement with somebody, like Wargames Factory or whatever, and you can't buy any of their stuff anymore, but it's Wargames Factory, I think that still counts. So there you go. Anyway, so that's about it. Any questions? Go to Steve Miniature Maniacs and ask him, because he's the Warlord dude. Anyway, right, moving on. Right, yes. Something I just want to make everybody aware of. Dark Ops, Steve Perry's or Pezzapoo's terrain company, Dark Ops. Their website's now live. If you go to www.darkops.co.uk, the link will be below. Because I can't put it up there because YouTube won't let me. You can go and buy some wonderful MDF laser cut scenery and buildings and stuff from him. He does. He's doing a load of stuff for Gates of Antares, but you can use it for 40k as well. He's got like loads of 28mm sci-fi stuff, beautiful stuff. He's also got a lot of stuff that scaled down, like 10mm stuff for Drop Zone Commander, and I suppose you could use it in any sci-fi sort of small scale stuff. 6mm, 10mm, 15mm, and 28mm, 20mm. Do you know what I mean? He's got like different sizes of stuff. You just have a look at his website, and you can order it direct from him. So there you go. That's something that's good. That's good, and hopefully you'll get some decent scenery out of it. Right then, I've not really done that much this week. I've been busy doing other stuff because I'm on first line support cover for work, so it's been a bit of a pain in the neck, and I will be doing so until the 18th of December. So I'm a bit sort of hamstrung at the moment with making sure that stuff for work goes right. But anyway, that's my life. Who cares, really? Anyway, Christmas. We're not far away from Christmas now, so we're not far away from the end of the Black Powder Paint Off 2015. Don't forget that you're if you're not doing any Warlord stuff, there's still competitions that you can enter, but you just go out and do that on the Black Powder group, and we'll sort that out. That's for Bacchus, Front Rank, and Calpe Miniatures stuff. Right, so let's have a look at some questions. Before I get started on the questions, there was one from British Legion last week about board games, and Peas Be With You sort of said, yeah, board games are outsell tabletop. Yeah, well, I think I just want to clarify something on the point, because I know Nick, and I know exactly what he meant. What he was meaning was that we've seen a rise from for war gamers or war games people like GW. It's an obvious example, but GW have Warhammer 40,000, and they released Space Hulk. Well, re-released Space Hulk, which is in effect a board game. So, and we've seen the same with Forge World releasing the 30k board game. I don't even know what it's called, but he's meaning that he's not meaning like Monopoly or Counter and Hex or that sort of. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, the market for board games is massive. The tabletop wargaming market falls into sort of a very, very minor portion of the universe's gaming sort of area. Do you know what I mean? It's a fraction of a percent. What he's actually talking about is people that did traditional tabletop war games. Are they going? Is there a rise or increase in preference to these boxed solution war games, basically? And so that's what he's actually meaning. But anyway, on that subject, he's said about. He asked another question about Colditz. Now I've got the original Colditz, and I'll just read out what he says. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I hear Colditz is being remade. Classic board game. Do you prefer to collect figures, buy rules, then make the terrain, or just buy a game sort of all self-contained in one box? Well, I don't really understand what he's. There's no structure to his question, but it's like he's a bit like that. He just sort of like sits there and makes statements sometimes, and I think that's that. Yeah, I understand that we're probably going to release Colditz. I got the original game, as I said. In fact, I found the other day the original box version of Campaign, which is a fantastic game. I think they've re-released that as well. But I got the original version of it. It's brilliant game. Anyway, Colditz. Yeah, well, I don't think as a kid I ever finished a game of Colditz because nobody would ever play it with me because it was a bit boring for other people. But I used to play it on my own. But anyway, by the by. Anyway, so what's he say here? Well, let's run through it. Do I prefer to collect the figures, buy the rules, then make terrain, or just buy the game in a self-contained box? Well, I don't buy self-contained game boxes apart from things like the Space Marine one, and I bought Journey Wrath of Demons off Pezza because it looked really cool and the miniatures. So I suppose it's the miniatures. If it's anything, it'd be the miniatures that made me buy a game. If I look at something, I think, well, the miniatures are much better. I just like the look of the miniatures, then I'll buy them. But I'm not really into board games at all. Mainly because I don't know that many people that would play them with me anyway, and I much prefer to just collect, figures and paint figures up and do normal gaming. Well, but it's normal. I don't know. Is there anything normal about what we do? But yeah, I'm not really into board games at all. And then obviously Peace Be With You was saying about. I've answered this question actually. I think he says about the board games bigger market than tabletop gaming, especially in the US. He's always done both. There's a growing trend towards hybrid games, usually in the form of board games with miniatures instead of counters. Honor Blucher is the opposite. A tabletop rules that can be used with cards, basically large counters. So yeah, I mean, like I say, I think there is a trend for these one box solutions. I have an opinion on this. I don't think it's a bad thing. Do you know what I mean? I think if you can get a kid walk into a shop for the first time, see some wonderful vision on a box, buy the box. He's got everything in it. Takes it home. It's got the miniatures in it. He might not paint them up now, but he can have a go at painting them up, and it gets them into sort of that whole thing of creativity. Because I think one of the problems we've faced over the last 25 years, 30 years, observably, is the rise of the computer game. And the problem with, I think that because of computer games tend to be instant on, aren't they? I mean, you put the disc in, or you open up Steam, or you click an icon on your desktop or whatever, and the environment is suddenly there in your face, and it's interactive and it's real and it's beautifully glossy graphics. Well, it is these days. When I 25 years ago, it was like little pixels, but even then, it was cool. And I think a lot of kids, especially, are not getting into into wargaming like we did when we was kids. Because I mean, when I was a teenager, we had Dungeons and Dragons, and it was all books and fantasy, and Steve Jackson's Fighting Fantasy, and Steve Jackson, whatever, Fighting Fantasy, and Dragon Magazine, and that sort of stuff. And it was all sort of, do you know what I mean? You went down to the comic shop and bought some miniatures, and you got a few crappy acrylic paints from wherever, and you glooped it on, and then you sort of like, wow, and it was much more creative, much more involved in that way. But I think today's market is completely different. I think that the standard of miniatures when I was a kid was, they were pretty shit, to be fair. But now, to compete against the high-res imagery and stuff like that, the miniatures have to be fantastic. They have to be beautiful, and we see it. We are seeing this now. I mean, the miniatures in Journey, Wrath of Demons, are probably some of the best miniatures I've ever seen for a box game. They're incredible. They're up there with the Space Hulk. Absolutely amazing. And because of that, I think that there is a demand for this instant on from the wargaming point of view. You know what I mean? I mean, they're not happy. If I was a kid now and I went in and I bought a war game in a box, like in the way that I would have done in the 1970s and early 80s, i.e., it was a map with lots of cardboard counters and I moved them around, I'd be sorely disappointed. Having been used to, switching on, I don't know, I can't think of any Far Cry or whatever games they are. I think I'd be a bit disappointed. And I'd be thinking, well, I've got to actually, there's nothing visual. I just have to move these counters around and roll the dice and look at the matrix. I can't be bothered with that. It's too much effort. So obviously, games companies and manufacturers have got to come up with something that's visual and appealing. And do you know what I mean? So there you go. That's my view anyway. I think, and that's probably the reason why we've seen an increase in these one box solution games, as Peter Withy points out. There's a growing trend towards hybrid games. So you've got your role play sort of stuff. You've got your tabletop wargaming, and you've got your box game with tiles and stuff like that, and it's all merging together because it'll give you. It takes less imagination in some ways, maybe. I don't know. Like I say, everything in my muse is my view. I don't know whether I'm right. I don't know whether I'm wrong. It's just the way I think. I could change my mind completely in a month's time, but at the moment, that's what I think based on what I've been thinking about. Anyway, so we'll leave the board gamey thing now. I'm sure there's hours and hours of debate out there, but that's my view anyway, and those are my thoughts on it. Maps and things. I would be interested in some advice on giving ink wash to figures or dip, etc. I tend to use a 50-50 ink and water mix, but sometimes I just end up with a dirty looking figure, especially on white clothing. I wouldn't wear white clothing when I'm painting them. Sorry, that was a joke. That was a joke. Right then, washes, flipping heck. It's a vast area, washing. One of the things you do say here is you use 50-50 ink and water. Personally, I wouldn't. When you say ink, I don't exactly know what you mean. Do you mean ink, or I've got some Indian ink over there? Indian ink, or ink? It's. I mean, this is a wash. This is an acrylic ink. You can get, like I say, Indian inks and all the sorts of multiple types of inks. If you're using, if you're talking about washes and inks, don't put water in them. If you put water in them, you'll knacker them. If they're getting a bit thick or you want them a bit runny, use an acrylic thinning agent like Flow Aid. But even then, if you put too much in, it'll just go poof, like that, and it'll just disappear. So you'll get any shading. You won't get any. You won't get any. Well, you'll get a thin film, but it'll all just go straight to the cracks. Maybe that's what you want. I don't know. It's one of these things that it takes. There are so many different uses of inks, stroke washes that it's one of those things. It depends on what you're looking for and what you want. I can tell you how I use inks, and I'm sure there are other people who have different opinions, and I'm sure there are some people that are able to help you a lot more than I can. And if you can, link into a video or something below in the comments, so as we can sort of, have a look at different inking techniques and stuff. One I will tell, well, I'll just tell you how I use inks nowadays. I do two types of stuff these days because I don't paint high detail anymore. I used to, but it would take me that long to paint something that I can't be bothered. But now I just paint quick, fast for getting groups of figures done. If I'm not going to be dipping something, I'll get all the base colours on the figure, and then I'll give it an overall ink wash, as it were, so a heavy wash. And what I mean by that is cover the entire figure in something like a black brown, which is Talent in a Bottle, Agrax Earthshade, or one of the Army Painter washes, not the dip, the washes. They have red tops, and I don't think I can see any of them. Oh, here we go. Yeah, one of them. Yeah, that's an acrylic wash. Yeah. So I use that and I go all over the figure. But what I do is I will take off excess ink or wash on flat surfaces. So I'll wash it all over, then I get another brush and I'll take off, like on the flat surfaces or the high level surfaces. So it's basically all of the tone is going into the recesses. Right? When it's dry, there is, like you say, a dirty film over the top, but that's not a problem because what I'll then do is I'll go back over it on the base colour. Right? So on the areas where the flat bits, I'll just basically just do a quick going over with the base colour. So I get high contrast between the deep shade and then the flat or the bits that I want highlighted. And then after that, I'll do another quick highlight over the top and varnish, and it's done. Right? There are two reasons why you'll get a film or a dirty film. Your ink's not, your stuff's not mixed properly, so it ain't flowing. So you're getting a bigger load of pigment sitting on the figure. If you shake it up and give it a good shake, I mean, if you're using stuff like Agrax Earthshade, you really want to give it a good, a good 30-second shake. Do you know what I mean? Just to get it all really mixed up. The other thing is you could be running out of too much medium in your stuff, so you need to add a bit more medium. I think is it Lamil medium they use for GW stuff. I don't know what they call it, but that's like that's just an acrylic medium. It's a Flow Aid in the same way that is a Flow Aid. So you might want to add a bit more of that. Or, like you say, you've added water, which isn't a good thing to add to like a GW wash or any sort of these acrylic washes because it doesn't mix the paint properly. It doesn't mix the pigment properly. Don't add water to them. Use Flow Aid. That's all I can think of. Now, if I'm doing for a dipping miniature, I do exactly the same process really, but I will use coloured washes on certain portions. So I'd use, like, say I was doing red, I would use one of the GW red washes, or shades they call them these days, and then probably finish with a glaze. Do you know what I mean? And then do the dipping. But I use the dip in the same way that I do with an all over colour wash. Basically, I get the thing, dip my brush in the varnish dip, and then paint it on and take off stuff on the high level, because otherwise it'll just look too dark, if you know what I mean. Because I like the sort of black lined sort of look to miniatures. I don't like. I'm not really fussed, because on a war games table you're looking at stuff far away, so you need high contrast. So I like bright colours, even if they're dark colours. I don't know whether this makes sense, but I prefer to have a bright black than a dull black covered in wash. So it's one of those things. I know what I mean. I can't get it across properly, but I do like this like high chiaroscuro type look to a miniature. And from a distance, they look great. Close up, they look shit. But from a distance, they look all right. Do you know what I mean? And that's that. I say it all depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve. I think a lot of people get confused with inks and glazes, and I'll put a link into Colour of the Gods channel, and if I can find it, I'll put a link into his video on glazes and how to use glazes or colour glazes. He makes his own using the Lamel medium or whatever it's called. Lamia, I can't remember. I don't know what it's called, but it's basically it's a acrylic medium for thinning out paints. It just carries pigment, but it carries pigment really loosely, I think. So it sort of so it just keeps the transparency up. But it's very scientific, I suppose. You have different luminosities to pigments, and as you layer them up, they'll go differently. And it's, I don't know, like I say, it depends on exactly what. It depends purely on what effect you're after, whether or not, or how you use the inks as to what results you'll get. It's a series of videos in itself, washing, but I'm sure all the answers are out there. So if anybody has any good videos, or knows of any good videos about inks and washes and all that sort of stuff, put in the comments. Help out maps and things. Alright. Mr. Super Chippy, you have a foot in both camps, fantasy and historical wargaming. Which is your favourite and why? Well, it depends on the time of the month. Do you know what I mean? It just depends. I do less fantasy now. I don't really. I gave up with fantasy and sci-fi and all that sort of stuff, because obviously people that have been subscribed for ages, I mean, know that I was really into GW stuff. I've got nothing against GW. I think GW are a great company. I mean, I used to work for them, so you know what I mean. It's not like I'm anti-GW in any way, shape or form. It's just that I can't deal with the fast pace of the fantasy and sci-fi markets. Every week a new thing comes out, and every week everybody has to go in it, and I personally don't have the money to keep up. So I've sort of retired and gone into the cardigan and slipper brigade of historic wargaming, and where I can take my time and I can keep up with myself, knocking out a battalion every month, 6 to 8 weeks, and that is fine. I think now I do prefer the historical stuff, and the reason I prefer the historical stuff is because I think the fluff's better. Do you know what I mean? And there's tons of it, and there's loads of stuff. You can just go to any bookshop in the country and you can find fluff at a reasonable price, and you can read around. There's loads of novels and historical fiction, all that sort of stuff that you can read around the period. You know what I mean? Like with the Napoleonic era, of course, you've got Sharp's rifles. You've got stuff which, like Mr. Super Chippy himself has told me, like Mark Urban's stuff on the rifles. He's also done one on the Fusiliers as well in the Peninsular War. You can read that sort of like factual fiction, as it were, and it's just interesting. It's much more interesting in my mind. And I can watch TV programs about it. I can't watch TV programs about Age of Sigmar. I can't sort of go onto the Discovery Channel and find out about the latest and greatest. And the problem with made up stuff, I think, is the fact that what happens is that companies like GW, for example, we're going out on a limb here. companies like GW, what they do is they will come up with some fluff, and they write their fluff in the books. Then they'll come out with a miniature, and everybody's got to get the miniature. But they can just keep making stuff up. It's a bit like subscribing to Partworks stuff, but you don't know how many issues you've got to buy at $7.99 a week, and so you end up starting at, once you've paid out the little bit at the beginning to get the free bit of a ship or bit of a train or whatever. By the time you're 4 weeks in, you've invested 28 quid into this thing, but you don't know how many parts there are going to be of this thing. And it's the same with like fantasy and sci-fi stuff. You don't know how they just keep bringing stuff out to sort of boost their own market, and that's great if you can afford it. But if it's like me and I can't afford it, the historical stuff's better because I know exactly what I'm getting. I can go and buy a little bit at a time. Doesn't seem to be any major marketing force. There's no screaming guitars and double kick at 128 beats per minute going on in the background about the latest daddy doo-dah that you need for your Space Marine army or whatever. So yeah, I prefer now the historic stuff. With Europe, which is my made-up world, I can use whatever I want, and and it's multi-period as well. I can set it up for classical or ancient or horse and musket. Do you know what I mean? And so you can still have the imaginative sort of stuff. You don't have to stick to history, if you know what I mean. With historic gaming, you can use what the term is imaginations, and make it all up, and there you go. So yeah, I prefer historical stuff nowadays. I can't keep up with the fantasy and sci-fi market. Sorry, I love GW's fantasy miniatures. I mean, the Sigmar stuff looks incredible, and I've got quite a lot of it from the starter art. The starter boxes. I've got 2 starter boxes, but I don't think I'm going to be getting into it in a big way, to be honest. And like Journey, Wrath of Demons as well. That's fantasy miniatures. That fantastic, beautiful miniatures. I'm going to end up overshooting massively here. Moving on from that, which fits in, is Jam Jar. Jam Jar 34 says, "What are your 5 tips for getting into historical gaming?" Well, I don't think I can't think of 5. I think the most important thing is liking the period. If you're gonna invest any level of money onto something, you've got to actually like or be interested in what you're doing. I mean, I like the Napoleonic Wars. The reason I like the Napoleonic Wars is not necessarily the history of it. I just love the miniatures. I just love like the German states have brilliant hats. Not so much the Prussians, but the Württembergers and the Saxons and the Nassau and stuff. They have brilliant hats. Do you know what I mean? They look dead cool. I don't know what it is about the Germans. The Germans look fantastic when they turn out for war. Do you know what I mean? They all have brilliant uniforms and very eye-catching. And but yeah, be at least interested in what you're doing and what you're looking at. So it's a personal choice. Be enthusiastic, I suppose. There's a lot of bookwork in historics. You've got to do a lot of reading. You've got to have a pretty good idea of source material. Trying to work, find out if like, say for example, you were gonna start with let's just stick it to horse and musket. If you're gonna, well, actually no, even classical stuff now. Buy stuff from like people, plastic box sets and stuff from like people like Perry and Warlord and what have you. Merely because inside each of the boxes they give you brilliant painting information, and stuff which is from a starting point is dead good. Because if you don't know anything about it, you open up a Perry box, you pull out the slip inside, and it's like got different units in it and a background to to that particular troop type, and contextual information about where it fought, that unit, that type of unit, and what it was doing, and these are the flags, these are the colours that you need to think about and get on, depending on whatever. And so that sort of stuff's pretty cool. You know, that's dead useful. Most people, you know, there's tons of, you know, it's getting information resources and working out where to get information from and stuff. You know, having access to the internet and being able to sort of access to YouTube and, you know, find people that are already doing it and ask them, because everybody will help you. You know, because everybody wants you to get into their sort of stuff, because the more people that do, the better it is. I don't know whether those are tips or not. I don't know, but a lot of time as well. You need a lot of time, and there's a lot of other stuff. It's not just painting miniatures and buying miniatures. You know, you need to find a decent rule set, or at least, you know, there's tons of free rule sets around you can have a look at. But get a simple rule set like Black Powder. When I say simple, I mean Black Powder is a very good rule set. It comes from quite a good stable. But there are other, you know, there are others. You know, there's General of the Brigade. There's we've already mentioned Blucher. There's loads of rule sets out there that are good. But don't buy I wouldn't buy a rule set before you've actually spoken to somebody about that rule set, because it's quite a big investment. You know, 30 odd quid for a book. But look, you know, looking at the images and stuff that spark your imagination is brilliant, and that's what that Black Powder, General of the Brigade and stuff have got fantastic publications. Anyway, enough on that. What we're doing with it, and we're doing for time. Well, I'm going to have to quit it, I think. I'm at 20 odd minutes now. I will just mention one daft question that's come in from somebody that I haven't heard from for ages and ages. I'm so glad that he commented last week. It's Cracked Cubes. And if you cast your mind back to many a moon ago, when we used to do questions in the past, we used to have a section called Cubes Asks. And basically, he was the most prolific question asker, and he asked some of the most daftest questions. So he's asked us a daft question. So here we go. Oh, and if anybody else asks a question like this, I won't answer it. It's only because it's Cubes that I'm going to answer it. He says, "How about your favourite biscuit?" He's asked this before, but I don't think I answered it. He must have forgot. He is getting on a bit. Do you know what I mean? Your favourite biscuit, or is that a cookie in England? I want to know all the details. What's best in each of the 4 seasons? Why Ringo prefers such biscuit, and what biscuit goes best with miniature painting? I.e., no sticky stuff transferred from the biscuit to the model. That sort of nonsense. Well, to be honest, Cracked, I don't eat biscuits or cookies when I'm painting. That was quick, wasn't it? I don't. I'm currently, I'm mostly eating brioche with chocolate marbling through it from Aldi. I love it. And the reason why I like them is because it comes in a tin tray, right? And you can peel the front of the tin tray down, and it sort of like sits behind your hand. In fact, I have such a tray, empty brioche tray, and what I do is I twist that down like that, and I can hold it like so, and the brioche sticks out like that, so you can have it at the side, and like that. See what I mean? And you just fold it back as you go. So there you are. Brioche. Food fit for the gods. So that about wraps it up then this week, I think. There's a couple of questions I haven't answered that have come in, but I'll save them for next week in case nobody can be bothered to ask any questions this week. So yeah, that's about it from me. Don't forget, Black Powder. If you want to enter the Warlord competition, go to My Wargaming Live and search for Warlord painting competition, and you put your pictures and videos just for the Warlord stuff in there. Everything else, keep it in the Black Powder Paint Off 2015 group, because Warlord themselves will be looking at that particular group for their painting competition. Like I say, more information, go to Steve Miniature Maniacs, and he will be able to give you tons of information about the Warlord portion of the painting challenge thing. And don't forget, go and order some MDF laser cut scenery of high quality at a low price from Dark Ops. Okay, thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you next week. Bye.